The other day, I had finally finished moving everything into my new house in my new neighborhood. I went outside early in the morning to take a walk around, and the first person I met was my neighbor, Mr. Loud, and he said,
"Hello, Jim."
And it was so deafening, I had to cover my ears. It was unbelievable. But his cute little dog ran up, and then his cute little dog, I just pet the dog, and the dog made this weird noise like this. Yeah, it was a cat noise. I mean, the dog, the weirdest thing was, he had put his dog in his cat in a dog suit. It was like a Halloween test or something, which is weird because I put my dog in a taco suit like most people, because then when he goes outside, when he walks down the street, it sounds like this.
Taco, 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 taco.
Yeah,
taco,
which is
taco.
the way I think a good dog should sound in Halloween. Anyway, so as I walked around the neighborhood, there was this beautiful tree, and in the tree it had gathered all these birds, and the birds almost sounded like they were singing together. It had this sound to it. Yeah, like this kind of thin little whistle. It was amazing. So many bird voices, and yet it came out with this thin little whistle. But then the weird thing was, coming down the street was another one of my neighbors, okay? And she's an Italian lady. And she has a slight Italian accent. And what she did was she looked up at the birds and she started to sing to them.
Oh, when's the moon hits your eyes like a big pizza pie.
And she had just woken up in the morning, so her voice was a little low and gravelly. It took her a while to get up to her normally high notes like that. And then the weirdest thing was this truck came down the street. It was a street sweeper truck, right, which had once been an ice cream truck. And so when it came down the street, it made this sound like a combination of street sweeping and ice cream truck. Yeah, very strange. A lot of the kids came running out of their houses, with their quarters all set to buy an ice cream. And one little boy seemed very sad. And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said,
I want ice cream.
I could barely make out what he was saying. So I said to his mother, "What's the matter? Is there anything I could do?" And she said,
"Buy him ice cream."
And I said, "Well, okay, I'll buy him an ice cream." So I reached in my pocket, and I felt my pocket, and I jingled my pocket. It wasn't change. I had my pocket full of stuff from the day before, and it made this weird kind of jingly sound. Yeah. And then I realized I had some of those, those things you stick on the window, those suction cups. My pockets were full of those suction cups because I was hanging things, decorations on the windows, and I had all the suction cups, and I got called away. And I remember the call was, it was my boss, who's a very gruff person. Every time he's on the phone, the first thing he says, he starts yelling at me with this gruff voice. It sounds like this.
"Get your papers in."
See? And I don't even have papers. But if I had papers, if I had a pile of papers, I would just take them and I would throw them up in the air, like I would make this huge noise. And then when they got closer, they'd be even louder. And then when they finally hit the ground, they'd sound like this. Yeah, because they'd land on a duck. And I'm guessing they'd land on a duck and they make that noise. So then as I'm walking down my neighborhood, all of a sudden I looked up and there was this, in front of me, it looked like a mirage. There was this pool of water. So I splashed through it. I just kind of kicked it, and I made a lot of noise doing it. It sounded like this. Right, and so some teenage boys were watching me, and they tried to make fun of me, and they yelled,
Hey, you wet person, I don't like.
Yeah, a wet person, because, their parents drove by just as they were starting to get, a little fresh with me. And that was the end of that. They rode off on their bikes, and they had those baseball cards attached to the wheels of their bikes, so they made this noise as they went. Yeah, the baseball card was kind of wet and damp, so it didn't have that real crisp noise, So what I did was I took a balloon and I blew it up. Yeah, and then I tied a knot, and then I attached it to the wheel of his bike, and then it made this sound. Yeah, it just popped and went flying away. So I said, this isn't even worth it. Just keep playing your bell of the bike. Ring the bell again. Let me hear it.
Bring, 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 bring.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. So I said, stick with that. That'll be good. So they rode off on their bikes with these little, bells they had that they hardly ever used. So just then, as I'm walking down the street, I look up, and there's the neighborhood police officer comes walking by. And I said hello to him. and he said to me,
I'm gonna arrest you for saying hello to me.
It was very strange, a very strange exchange. First, he had to open up this little book. It was like his first day on the job, so he's basically following a guide of what to say to people on the beat. So then, as he walked away, I realized he had stuck on the bottom of his foot something that made this weird noise. And I realized it was the suction cups that had fallen out of my pocket. And I had a hole in my pocket, and that's what had done it. So now I turned around, I was heading for home, and as I started to run up the street, a lot of the neighborhood dogs started to chase me.
Ruff, ruff, ruff.
And only they had one spokesman. No, none of them. They were chasing me, and they had elected one of them to do the barking. It was really interesting. So then I finally made it home, and I rang my own doorbell because the door was locked.
Bing bong.
And no one came, so I had to knock really hard,
Knock, 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 knock.
and nobody came. So I opened up a window. I tried to open a window. I finally opened up the window. And just as I went, I slid through the window, and I landed on the floor into a big pile of whipped cream. And that was basically the end of my day. It ended in a really nice way.